Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to have a look at another collaboration beer. So this one is half Norwegian on the home side, half English on the away side. Out of the two breweries, it's only the Norwegian one that's featured on the channel before, and they are a very, very well respected name in Norwegian craft brewing. A very solid all-round brewery in my experience. We've had some really nice lagers from them, IPAs, but also big imperial stouts as well. And it's always cool to review new beers from these guys. On the English side of things, this brewery is a very new addition to the English beer scene. They've got a really quite interesting business model and just a very interesting way of doing things actually as well. And they're only just kind of getting off the mark at the moment. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys progress over the next little while. So we need to keep an eye on them and see if we can get a hold of some of their own beers at some point in the future. But the beer itself is a style that I really quite enjoy, and one that we don't get to review all that often on the channel actually, although I have noticed earlier in the year that there are a number of these floating around now, so we need to keep our eyes open for them. But I've heard this one is quite nice, and as I say, as I always say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up to Stavanger in Norway, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Lervig Aktiebryggeri. So this particular beer is called Shuffleboard. It comes in at 5.3% ABV, and they're calling this one a Mexican rice lager. So yeah, this has been brewed both with corn and with rice, as it would be, and they describe this one as a mix between a Mexican lager and a Japanese rice lager. But those are both styles that I really quite enjoy, and that was the main reason that this one kind of caught my eye, if you like. But yeah, this is brewed in collaboration with Brewing, who are from England, and as I say, they're very, very interesting in doing things in a really unusual way, actually. But my very first encounter with them, and you'll see why I find these guys quite interesting when we go into the history section of the video. So yeah, curious to see what this is going to have for us. Let's crack on and see what we've got. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the links to my other reviews that I've done from Lervig Aktiebryggeri before, and my future reviews that I'll do from Brewing. Very first time we're encountering them, as I've mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography-based tagging system. Go to the search bar, put in your home country, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is, and if I've reviewed beers from that area, they should pop up. And remember as well that you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one both in the Norwegian playlist and in the English playlist, and yeah, there will be more things added to those in the future, of course. But yeah, let's go on then to my brewery notes, and we'll chat a little bit about Lervig Aktiebryggeri first off then. So, Lervig Aktiebryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Stavanger in southern Norway, and the company was founded back in 2003 after the Toll brewery was sold to Carlsberg, and then they subsequently moved production down to Oslo. But for a while, the Lervig beers were produced at Mack Brewery up in Tromsø, very far up north in Norway, but production was moved to Hillevåg in Stavanger back in 2005. So the head brewer for Lervig is Mike Murphy, and he's been with them since 2010. But prior to this, the brewery were making just very light lager beers, and then when Mike came in, he moved them to making the more American style craft beers, and this is where they really started to make their name. But Mike apparently played quite a pivotal role in the Danish craft beer scene, and he collaborated with several of the well-known brewers like Mikael Bjergso of Mikkeller, Jeppe Bjergso of Evil Twin, and then Sean Hill, who of course went on to found Hill Farmstead Brewing, and then Andreas Kiesmeyer, who's done various different things across Denmark. He also worked for a period of time at Birra del Borgo in Italy, but now he owns 5% of Lervig Aktiebryggeri, so he is an active partner in the company. But the CEO of Lervig is Anders Kleistrup, and the main owner of the brewery was originally Christopher Stensrud, who owned 67% of the shares. But in 2018, Orkita Capital, who also own part of Mikkeller, bought 50% of the company and are helping them to expand. but they are working on opening up a new facility called Ulhalene in Stavanger, and that is scheduled to open at some point fairly soon from what I understand. But when it comes to the brewery itself, they export around 1/3 of all their beer, and in total this brewery produces somewhere in the region of 15% of all the exported beer from Norway, although that is changing. There are more breweries in Norway who are starting to export things. But as of November 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, Lervig have produced around 270 different kinds of beer, and like I say, in my experience, these guys are a very solid all-round brewery. Probably my favourite beers I've had from these guys, the Supersonic IPA was always very good, and then the Conrad Imperial Stout is a pretty awesome one as well, and that's fairly easy to get a hold of actually, so that's probably a good place to start when it comes to Lervig Aktiebryggeri. But potentially another favourite I would mention would be the Three Bean Stout. That was awesome, I have to say. Very, very nice beer. One of my favourite ones I've reviewed from Lervig as well. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Lervig Aktiebryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, of course, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about the different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's go on to the English side of things then, and this is completely new. So, Binde Brewing, as I've mentioned to you, these guys are based in England, and the company was founded in June of 2021 by Robbie Knox and Mike Miller. So Robbie Knox is a YouTuber. He posts random videos of himself doing different things, like, you know, installing a doorbell or just, you know, going random places and stuff like that. And it's quite popular. But Mike Miller, on the other hand, is a former BBC television presenter. But the company operates as a gypsy brewery, and the aim is to become an integral part of the YouTube community, but make beers with fellow content creators and stuff like this. But the other aim is to be the most transparent brewery around, and they want to make videos that show the brewing process, teach people about brewing, and, you know, all their collaborations with different breweries that they'll do. And they've done quite a few so far from what I understand. But the first beer that they released was called Valencian Tip Run. This was an orange pale ale, and this was brewed in collaboration with Doc's Beers from Grimsby, and it was launched through the brewery's various social media channels, and it sold ridiculously fast, and Doc Beers were saying it was the most successful collaboration beer that they ever did. Now, they do plan to do more collaborations as they go forward, and they're going to continue to document these on their YouTube channel. There are already quite a few videos on there, so I'll try to remember to put that link into the video description when I upload this video, of course. But the brewery is apparently named after one of Robbie's children's favourite activities, which is taking out the bins. So yeah, Bin Day Brewing, there you go. But yeah, so far on their own, they've only released one beer. Pretty much, I don't know how many they've released with the collaborations. It was a little bit hard to try and figure that out. But yeah, this is certainly the first time I've encountered Bin Day Brewing. But yeah, you can have a rake through their YouTube channel and see there's at least 5 or 6 in there as well. But as I say, a very new addition to the English beer scene, and it's going to be interesting to see how these guys go forward. So yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Bin Day Brewing. Again, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. They have actually got quite a nice website up there, and you know, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, of course. And yeah, check out the Untappd page, and you'll see the different beers that they've done. And I think, yeah, hopefully they'll add to that over the next wee while. But yeah, it's only one beer that's listed on the Untappd page, but they have done quite a few more collaborations than that, but they will be on the other breweries page, I would guess. Like this one is listed on Lervig Aktiebryggeri's page. So yeah, that's everything that we need to say about them for the moment. Let's get on and have a wee look at this beer itself. So there are a few things to tell you about this one. They say that this is a cross between a Mexican lager, which uses corn, and then a Japanese rice lager, but it's hopped with Motueka, which we know quite well, gives you about 8% alpha acid and a big oily limey character, and it's also got an experimental hop in it called Hort 9909, and I took a few notes on this because we always like learning about new hops. But as I say, this is an experimental variety from New Zealand. It contains genes from Hallertau Mittelfrüh, the mid-spring Hallertau, a German wild variety, and also Czech Sats. It will give you somewhere between 9 and 11% alpha acid, and it's supposed to give lemon, lime, and really nice grassy and floral aromas. So yeah, should be quite interesting, this one. We need to see what this has. But yeah, I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, the artwork on this is pretty nice. There you can see both the Lervig star and the Bindi brewing symbol. Plain silver top on the can there. This one is a ½ litre, incidentally, which is why it looks a little bit taller than normal. Usually we have 440 millilitres in there. But yeah, I believe this cost me 35 Swedish kroner, so that is like €3.50. I don't know what that would be converting it into Norwegian, but yeah, about €3.50, maybe about £3 sterling, and yeah, probably about $4 American, something like that. But yeah, there we go. A Mexican rice lager at 5.3% ABV, Shuffleboard. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Just very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So yeah, I should point out as well, this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden, I believe toward the end of October 2022. I have had this beer a couple of weeks. I was struggling to find information on Bindi Brewing, but you know, sometimes you have that. You search for information on breweries, you can't find anything, and then you search it again like a week or so later and you find everything. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. But yeah, there we go. So, anyway, let's have a wee look at this beer. As you can see, before the head disappears, it's poured with about a 3/4 finger of quite a bumpy white head, but there's a mix of smaller bubbles in there and a few bigger ones toward the surface. I'll just let you have a wee look at that. It does look pretty nice though, I have to say. In terms of colour, it is kind of what you would expect from either a Mexican lager or a Japanese rice lager. It's got that lovely kind of bright yellow note to it. I mean, remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts you put in will affect the colour of the beer too. But when it comes to, you know, rice lagers and Mexican lagers and things like that, you know, the corn and the rice isn't going to affect the colour of the beer all that much, as far as I know. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice, and you can see it does have a lovely little bit of natural haze to it, this one. So yeah, nothing overly surprising, or nothing particularly surprising at all about the appearance of this beer when you consider what style it is. I think we should take a wee look at the aroma and see what that's going to have in store for us. That is quite nice. You know, I noticed earlier in the year there were quite a few Mexican lagers floating around. I remember when I was with Adam and Harry at Dig Brew in Birmingham, they had one on tap, and of course we had one at the Bishop's Arms in Malmo recently, which was Alesmith from the US, if I remember correctly. So I've noticed Mexican lagers in general are getting more popular, but we're starting to see all the different variants. We also had a Portuguese rice lager from Dois Corvos in Brazil on tap recently, and that was very good. But yeah, 2 styles that I do enjoy, and I wish there were more of them. But I have to say, aroma-wise, this one is really quite interesting. You can certainly pick up quite a bit of the Pilsner malt in this, but yeah, you are getting the oiliness from the rice and the sweetness of the corn, and a nice little bit of hoppy character as well. I think this is going to just be quite an easygoing, drinkable beer, but that's what you want from any kind of lager, to be honest with you. You want good flavour, but you also want it to be nice and drinkable. So I think this will be good. So, yeah, aroma-wise, I think this is pretty damn nice. So yeah, quite nice, yeah, nice and crisp. You get everything you expect from it. Let's just break it down and describe it that wee bit more in depth. So, backbone of the beer, you can smell that nice kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. On top of that, you've got a good little bit of Jacob's cream cracker. So yeah, definitely some interesting things going on there. A little bit of, yeah, fresh white bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, and then you've also got that soft white bready note out of it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker. Then you get, it's kind of interesting. I'm actually, on top of that, you get a little touch of this kind of wholemeal brown bready character. but then you get the softer white bread. And the bready layers don't come across as being too dense or too thick, actually. So yeah, I do quite like how that goes together. Um, but on top of that, you can smell the rice and the corn in this one. So the rice, I always, I'm a big fan of Japanese sakes, and I do enjoy a Japanese rice lager. The one that Mikkeller did in the blue can recently, which I think was just called Japanese rice lager, that was very, very nice. But yeah, that you can smell the oiliness of the rice in this one, and the rice, from different regions of Asia, of course, the rice is going to smell a bit different. Sometimes it's got a wee bit of floral character to it. Sometimes it's a bit more oily and sweet. And of course, in Japan, they take the grading of rice for sake very, very seriously. And then, it's all about how much they mill the rice down before they put it into the sake to ferment. But yeah, you smell that lovely oily ricey character out of this one for sure. Then you've got the sweeter corn just sitting on top of it. But there's also, I'm pretty sure from the aroma, there's a little bit of Pilsner malt in this one, because toward the back of the nose, you get that wee bit of dryness and crispness, and there's also just a little touch of a McVitie's digestive biscuity note. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is quite interesting in the malty side of things. This one, I was just wondering, does it contain a bit of wheat? Yeah, it does. So it could be that the wheat's giving you a little bit of that kind of dryness and bitiness out of this beer as well. I just saw Veta on the back of the can there. But yeah, aroma-wise, over on the malty side of things, it's pretty nice. Let's look at the hoppy side of the beer then. So I like how this goes together. So, the hoppy side of things with this beer, there's a nice little bit of earthiness in there, but not too much. Then you get quite a nice bright floral character out of it. And I think, I don't know, I guess the Hort is the Hort hop, the 9909 is going to give you that, but the Motueka certainly will as well. So you've got quite a nice bright floral character in this one and a good little bit of grassiness. But overall, I would say that the green component comes across as being sort of oily in this beer. So definitely getting a wee bit of that vibe out of it. Yeah, nice little bit of oily character to it for sure. And then, yeah, and then above that, yeah, a nice little bit of oily character. Then above that, you start to get a wee bit of the more, you do get a little bit more of the zesty character as well. But yeah, nice oily green component, a little bit floral, a little bit grassy, but also a bit zesty, but generally speaking, a little bit wetter, I would say. So let's look at the fruity side of things with this beer just before we taste it. When it comes to the fruity side of the beer, there's not too much to report in this one. There's a little bit of a kind of apricot-y note, there's a little bit of an oily pear for me, maybe a wee touch of sultana, something like that. Dry white green grapes, maybe a little touch of gooseberry as well actually. But yeah, pear, sultana, a little bit of gooseberry, things like that. Yeah, flavor, aroma-wise, I have to say this one is quite nice. Of course, it's not the most complex of aromas, but you kind of wouldn't expect that from this style. But I just want this to be nice and drinkable. That's what you would want from this. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But this one is the Shuffleboard, a Mexican rice lager, 5.3% ABV from Lervig in Stavanger in Norway, and Binde Brewing, who are a kind of gypsy brewer on YouTube from England. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. This one, it's interesting because it's very, very clean, which you'd expect from pretty much any Norwegian beer. You can feel it's very, very clean. But when you go further into the aftertaste with it, it gives you the big oiliness that you want from either a Mexican lager or or a rice lager. The corn and the rice will really come out of this beer in the aftertaste. That's well done. That is a really quite nice Mexican lager, I have to say. It gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, very, very easy to drink beer. And it gives you everything you'd want. Very straightforward, but very well done. You can't ask for much more than something like this. Shuffleboard. Good stuff. Right. let's break this down and describe it for you properly. And I'm just checking that that's lined up nicely for the camera there. I always get OCD about that, of course. But yeah, break this down. Middle third of your palate. So, middle third of your palate then. Nice little bit of fresh. Nice little bit of kind of fresh white bready bread crust in the base, as we've said, but a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be. There's a little touch of that Jacob's cream cracker, as we mentioned earlier. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you get a very slight kind of woody note coming out of the beer actually. So there's very slight woodiness there. Then above that, there's a nice little bit of white bready character. Maybe there's a teeny little bit of like a wholemeal brown bread and then a white bread character. The bready notes are not massively tall. They're more kind of subtle and quite condensed down actually, I would say that. So yeah, definitely getting some of that in this beer. Yeah. It's interesting that, because it really develops this one. I was saying in their nose I was picking up some Pilsner malt or something like that in this beer. You do get a little bit of it, but I think the rice and the corn in this one, you will notice that that middle third of your palate is really just wet and oily, and that is something that you find inherent both in the Mexican lager and the Japanese rice lager. And I think because they've made a hybrid of the two here, it's even more pronounced. So the mouthfeel in this one, very, very clean, but at the same time, it's got this really oily vibe to it, and I certainly like it. So, yeah, as I said, you've got the bread crust, a little bit of woodiness, a bit of Jacob's cream cracker, a little bit of wholemeal bread, a little bit of white bread. All of those layers are quite dense and not so tall in the middle third of your palate. Then above that, you've got one or two other things going on, like toward the back of that middle third of your palate, there's a little touch of the kind of Pilsner malty dryness in there. And then as you move further forward, you get the kind of more oily circle coming out of the beer. So you've got that oily circle in the middle of your palate, and that's where you've got the rice and the corn. And it's hard to pick. I think the rice is kind of the one sitting on the base, and then you get the sweeter corn just kind of sitting on top of that. But yeah, it gives you this big oily, sweet flavour coming out of the beer, and I think that's what I like about this one. One of the things I love about Japanese sake is just the oiliness and the sweetness that you get from it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, awesome stuff. Really nice stuff, this beer. The other thing I would say about this one is that above that kind of ricey and corny layer, you do get a little bit of a more biscuity quality out of the beer. And again, that makes me think there is a wee touch of Pilsner malt in this one. So yeah, you've got that little bit of sweet, oily, biscuity character in the middle of the palate, and as you move further out from that, it gets a wee bit more kind of like McVitie's digestive biscuit like. So yeah, wee bit of that going on in this one for sure. But as I say, it doesn't give you so much in the way of crispness. It is more of a kind of oily character that you get from this one. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, that is pretty cool actually. So on top of that, you have a really nice. I think that, well, actually, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of the palate. So if we go to the back third of the palate, then, like I said, in that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. You get a little bit of the kind of Pilsner malt crispness, but as I say, this whole beer, it gets wet, it gets more wet and oily the more that you drink of this one, so it's quite nice. But the base of that back third of your palate, you get a wee bit more of the kind of bread crusty quality that I was talking about. The cracker is there too, and it is a little bit drier, of course. Remember, the more dry and bitter flavours come out further back on your palate, the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So you've got a wee bit more dryness to the bread crust and the cracker. Then you've got the wholemeal brown bread sitting on top of that, and then the the white bread, and those are a little bit taller. But then above that, you've got a kind of wheaty. You do have the kind of wheaty sort of thing sitting on top of that. So there's a little bit of the kind of wheaty, bitey sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how that I do quite like how that goes together. So yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is that little bit taller. And then yeah, as you come further forward, it just kind of condenses down a wee bit. The thing that's interesting about this beer is that you don't get so much in the way of, usually above that on at the top of the back third of the palate, I always get quite a few kind of yeasty notes. There is a little bit of a kind of almost very airy, white bready, yeasty kind of thing sitting there, but it's really not as apparent in this beer as it has been in other ones that I've tried before. So yeah, the way that this goes together is really quite interesting. So yeah, this beer is really nice from the kind of malty perspective for me. Gives you everything you'd want. And as I say, I think for me the rice kind of takes the lead in this one a little bit. I feel this beer's a little bit more ricey and oily than it is kind of corny and sweet. If you like, I really feel like that one. So I think calling it a Mexican rice lager is quite nice. They probably have used Mexican rice in this, and that's just would make sense, to be honest with you. But yeah, it does taste a bit different from the Japanese rice. I think Japanese rice is a little bit sweeter than whatever kind of rice it is they've used in this one. But still, I really like this, so gets a thumbs up from me from the malty side of things. Let's look at the hoppy side of the beer then. So green component first. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there, but not too much. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal. And as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral and aromatic for sure. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of floral aromaticity to the beer. It's a little bit more oily. Then round the front curve of the palate, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy for sure. Um, yeah, so it's a little bit more kind of, as I say, the green component though overall is really quite wet and really quite oily in this one. Um, so yeah, you've got that nice kind of big grassy floral note there. Um, and that builds, I think, the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, around the front curve of the palate, you get the wetter grassiness, but it's got a wee touch of zest to it as well. And that's the floral notes, I think, are more from the Motueka because they feel a bit familiar, but the grassy, zesty notes that this beer has is a little bit more unfamiliar. So I'm guessing that that's from the Hort 9099 or whatever it was called. So yeah, the green component in this one is quite interesting. You get a wee bit more of the herbal and earthy character the further into the aftertaste that you go, but still, as I say, it's a very, very nice beer. Um, yeah, so for me, I think this goes together really quite nicely for sure on the green component, and that just adds a wee bit more depth to the beer. But let's look at the front third of your palate and the fruitiness then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up there. So there's a wee bit of that, but it's still got all the oily stuff sitting on top of it. The base of that front third of your palate has a little bit more of a smooth, white bready character to it. Then above that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, I like that. So yeah, little bit of a more, um, as I say, a little bit of a more oily type thing with this beer. We have a wee bit of, as you would say, there's a little bit of a there really is a little bit of dry fruity character to this one, which is quite interesting. But as I say, the overall character of this beer is being more oily and slick, and you really get that in the middle of your palate with this beer. So at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a more oily. You can feel there's a little bit of an oily pear on top, but then underneath that, you start to get a kind of sultana, dry white green grapey character. As you move further forward into the middle of your palate, there into the middle of that front third of your palate, you get a little touch of like a dry apricot. But really, for me, the overall flavour and the fruity side of this beer is like sultana, and it's like an oily sultana, but also a kind of oily peary character as well. So yeah, the way this beer goes together in a lot of ways, I think it is very, very nice. This one gets a big, big thumbs up from me. Yeah, awesome stuff, I have to say. Um, as I say, that this beer, this style is not madly complex, but if you can do them well, like if you can do a Mexican lager well and you can do a Japanese rice lager well, they can just be really enjoyable, and that's what I'm getting out of this beer. You know, it's just a really nice drinkable lager, and I've been really getting into these over the last wee while. So this is definitely worth trying, and it is a bit different. It's not quite as sweet as a Japanese rice lager. Not quite as sweet and smooth as a Japanese rice lager, I guess we could say, and it's also not quite as sweet as like what you would call a Mexican lager with a bit of corn and stuff in it. So yeah, this is really quite an interesting take on the style, if you like. So thumbs up to both Lervig and Binde for this. They've produced something that's really just nice and drinkable, and you can't ask for much more. You know what you're buying when you buy this beer. Let's round off then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, definitely a light-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth, and as I've said a few times now, the body of this beer is really oily and kind of slick, actually. So yeah, nice kind of slick, oily body to the beer. Um, it goes together very, very well actually. So nice, slick, oily body to the beer. In terms of IBUs, I think this is. I'd be surprised if this is even 15 IBUs, to be honest with you. The green component does have a little touch of bitterness to it, but really not a lot. The malt base, as we said, there's a wee bit of kind of graininess and dryness underneath, but overall it's quite an oily. It really is quite an oily and slick malt base. Little touch of sweetness to it, and the fruits again are quite oily and a little, yeah, more oily and just a little touch of dryness in there as well. But yeah, a really quite enjoyable beer, this one. Very, very easy to drink. That's what you want from this style. You can't really ask for much more than that. But when Lervig are involved, you know you're going to get something that is good quality. So yeah, I think this is quite nice. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. To be honest with you, so yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from both Lervig and Binde Brewing. I do hope we can return to Binde Brewing at some point in the future and do something. But yeah, Lervig, we probably will be trying more beers from them at some stage, at some point soon as well. But yeah, this was the Shuffleboard, a 5.3% Mexican rice lager containing rice and corn. I think they did a nice job of this. I really enjoyed having a taste of something a wee bit different, and that's what you want after 3,600 different beer reviews. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out the brewery's social media, and I'll see you guys again in another review very, very shortly. Slange, skull, and cheers.